Welcome to the Daily Dawg podcast. It is Saturday, September 6th, and that means it is game day in Athens. We have done it. We've made it through another long work and school week to get back to a glorious Saturday where we get to go watch the Bulldogs, whether on TV or in person in Sanford Stadium, take the field, come out of the big smoky tunnel at the the Georgia locker room side of the field, and come out from underneath Sanford Bridge there onto the field, Vince Dooley Field, and take on another opponent. And our opponent is not exciting this week, as it wasn't particularly last week, but we are excited to watch our team come out there and play. Like we've talked about, just one of those 12 guaranteed games that we get each year where we know we get to see Georgia play. We think we'll play in more than 12 games. We expect to make a bowl game. We hope to make the playoffs. We hope to make the SEC championship game. But like we talked about in an earlier podcast, you have to earn those games. The 12 that are on the schedule are the ones you know you get. And so as a fan, we're going to savor each and every one of them. That's why we take the time to break it down, talk about it, get in depth, even though so far we've been digging into teams like Austin Peay and Marshall. But next week, we get a lot more to chew on as we go on the road and face Tennessee. So we've already broken down the game this week. We've already looked ahead to, what we're looking for, what we hope will happen. But what I want to take a moment to do as we get started here today is respond to a couple. I did get some fan feedback from a couple people, and I want to share a couple things. First and foremost, I always like to correct the record. I corrected the record before when I mistakenly said that Gabe Harris had transferred to Missouri, and he had not. Sorry about that, Gabe. I last week, or sometime in the last week, mentioned Ellis Williams, the sensational freshman tight end recruit, or he's a sensation because of his size, and he was a highly rated recruit, a top 30 top price prospect. I mentioned him as being 6'10", and to be honest, I heard somebody say that on the broadcast. I don't know if it was on the TV broadcast or on the radio broadcast. I would hope if I heard it from a broadcast, it was from the TV guys, because those are hired guns that drop in every week. And last week's guys were not even one of the known crews that we're used to seeing ESPN send. So it's a different bunch of guys who maybe or maybe not as familiar with Georgia football. The radio guys, of course, they know Georgia football in and out. And just so you know, I am one of those nutball fans who will listen both simultaneously to the Georgia radio broadcast and the TV broadcast. I do put a AirPod in my left ear typically because I'm a little more the way when I'm watching the game at home, the sound is more oriented in the room from the TV to my right ear. So I put the AirPod in silent in my left ear, and I can hear the radio broadcast, and I can listen to the TV commentators at the same time. And I bounce the volume up and down on both of those, depending on who's talking. Of course, I can always pause the TV and then try to catch back up. It's harder to pause the radio. The radio broadcast is typically a little bit behind. So the way it actually works for me is I'll listen to the TV and I'll keep the radio maybe turned down a little bit. And then, for instance, when we break off a brilliant play or a long touchdown or a key interception or something like that, then I'll either mute or put down the TV signal, because a few seconds behind will be Scott Howard delivering a signature call on the big play, and I'll get to hear that in live real time, which I always appreciate. So love Scott Howard's work. And also, just while I'm here talking about broadcasting for a second, I don't think I had caught on or realized that Eric Zeier was stepping away from the broadcast, and I don't know any insight about that or the full story. It appears that at least the words that were thrown out there, that wants to spend more time with family. From what I've heard him say, or what I know, he has family, he has another business, and then he does the broadcast stuff on the side. He'd been doing that for 18 years, and I bet that makes for a very busy lifestyle, and it definitely keeps him, if he's working during the week and then all invested in Georgia football for the weekend and everything that's involved with the broadcast, then I'm sure, and the travel when they're on the road, I'm sure that's a big strain on family time. So I completely respect his decision. If it's about family time, I hope it wasn't something else internal, because really love Eric Zeier, appreciated his play on the field. I appreciate his commitment to Georgia football and being a good damn dog all around. And we're really contemporaries. I watched him play from Sanford Stadium when I was a student, when he was a freshman. So I have a lot of positive energy about Eric Zier, and I wish him well, and I hope he's doing great. So I like having Josh Brock in there too. I will take any good damn dog who's been a Georgia fan or a Georgia player, and is a continued to be a Georgia fan in that broadcast. Hear their insights, and as long as we've got Scott Howard, who continues what I think is a fantastic tradition. I think he learned at the best with Larry Munson. Still miss Larry every day. I know we all appreciate getting to hear Larry's words come over the loudspeakers at Sanford Stadium before each game when they play the reel with Larry's um, talking about what it means to be a Bulldog and ending in those two simple words, go dogs. Uh, and we've all just glommed onto the go dogs over the last 20 years plus in a wonderful way that just warms everybody's heart, right? When you see fellow dogs or anybody says anything and you end any conversation with a dog fan, you say, go dogs. So, kudos to Scott Howard and the broadcast team for continuing the tradition that Larry, I think, really started. And thank you for Eric Zier for being there for 18 years. And I look forward to continuing to hear how Josh's tenure goes, stepping into that color analyst role. So, congratulations to him, and I'm glad he's with us. Um, Okay, so we wandered way off the topic. That was a circuitous route from talking about things I was correcting, and I was talking about Ellis Williams, and we wandered into the broadcast and how I watched that. So I was correcting the record on Ellis Williams. I heard somebody on a broadcast say that he was 6'10, and I didn't look it up. I just took it into my head and threw it out there the next time I was talking about it with you. So apparently he's not 6'10, he's 6'7, according to the media guide. He is number 10. So maybe I conflated a couple things. Number 10, Ellis Williams, who's 6'7, caught the ball. Maybe I heard something like that. So nonetheless, want to be accurate. It's probably a small detail, and you're probably laughing at me, but hey, let's be accurate. Okay, also wanted to react to a couple fan things real quick before I just throw out some perspective for today as we get ready to head off and go to Sanford Stadium, and I will be going to Sanford Stadium today and watching the game in person. So not super competitive game, but I will be taking in and enjoying just being a part of the Sanford Stadium atmosphere, and I hope many of you will be too. Um, so the question came from another fan who said, was I a little more concerned? They heard my breakdown of the game and what happened at the beginning of the week, where we went back and we looked at our checklist and we said, look, coming into the game, we'd like to have seen 550 yards, 51 points, didn't quite get there, but came close. Wanted to see balance, 200 yards passing, 200 yards rushing or more on either side. We did get that. And how did I feel about that? Given there was a couple things I didn't bring up, and they mentioned that while we started, and I might have alluded to this, but I didn't highlight it. We started by scoring 3 or 4 times we touched the ball, 3 touchdowns, which is great, 21-0. But then into the second quarter, which we did talk about, and several other people had talked about, there was a little bit of a swoon in the second quarter where Georgia's offense kind of bogged down, and we only scored on 2 of the next 5 drives. And those 2, one of them was the one field goal we had in the game. So we obviously slowed down quite a bit. Just two drives of scores. One was a field goal out of 5, and we all felt that. We all saw that, whether you're digging into the stats or not. So, and then we would go on to close out the game, get up to 45-0, and we felt pretty good about it. But obviously, we bogged down a bit there. And then the same person also brought up that somebody that people had noted, and I'm sure others have talked about this, that while we were while we did score those first 2 drives and we were up 14-0 and looked pretty good doing it and went pretty quick, 14 points in the first quarter, we did have to convert fourth down. Once for the score, fourth down was a touchdown, and the other, there was a fourth down just ahead of the touchdown. Both of them were deep into the enemy territory, and we would not have had the touchdowns without the fourth down. So the question arose, would we, sure, we went for it on fourth down to make sure that we were putting points on the board against Marshall, but if we're on the road against Tennessee in a couple weeks and you get stuffed at the goal line and it comes down to 4th and 5 or 4th and goal from the 5, are we going to go for the touchdown again and make sure we get those points when you're playing a better team, or are you just going to kick the field goal? And, is that going to be a problem if we start putting up less points against a better team? And the answer to that is, I don't really know, and none of us do. I mean, we Kirby will not tell us even if we ask him directly. I mean, if I was Kirby's best friend and we sat around talking about the game, he may or may not tell me, that he would, that he went for it just because it was Marshall, but against Alabama or Tennessee or Auburn, he would never have done that. He would have kicked the field goal. And if he did tell me, he would swear me to secrecy and never speak to me again if I revealed what his choices were in that regard. So we don't really know. A lot of it is game by game. I think Kirby makes decisions in the moment, just watching him, based on how the game is flowing. And that's what a coach needs to do. I mean, you don't need to be an automatron and make the same choice every time. Coach has to read the situation. Coach has to look at his team, look at the other team, think about where the game is going and where the score is in that time and what's necessary. I mentioned this before, looking back to last week's Texas Ohio State game. I think Sark, while Arch Manning he would have gotten all the love had he been awesome, because Texas was not awesome and the offense was not awesome. Arch Manning's not getting all the love and he was under a lot of scrutiny. But I think there's been a lot less scrutiny that I initially heard about Sark and his coaching decisions in that game. I mentioned this before, I think, in a previous podcast, but just to review real quick, I think when they got the ball and about midway through the third quarter, and they'd get to a fourth and goal from the one, Sark went for it. And the time they were down 7-0 on the road. Both teams had slogged around and done almost nothing on offense, and here Texas had a chance to score, and they're only down 7-0. He went for it, and I understand the drive. I mean, part of me as a fan would definitely want to see my team man up and punch it in. But logically, I think if you step back, it was not the right choice. It was not a good coaching choice. Even though nobody had really scored in that game, just the one touchdown. You're midway through the third quarter, and I don't think you can expect or think you're playing for the tie midway through the third quarter. So risking getting any points at all on the first time you really had a good opportunity to score, risking that on the fourth down play as opposed to kicking the chip shot field goal probably is not the move, because if you're going to win that game, you're going to have to get the ball back and come down and score again. So you need at least two scores to win the game. And if it was the same position in the fourth quarter, midway through the fourth quarter, nobody's really scoring. It's a slog fest. 7 minutes to go, let's say, and you're on the goal line and it's 7-0. Well, then you may think, look, this may be my only chance to tie up the game. And it would be realistic to see the game out from there and make it a tie and take it to overtime and take your chances there. But it's not realistic, even in a game with that little scoring, with halfway through the third quarter and all the fourth quarter to go, to think you're playing for the 7-7 tie. So you're still playing for the win. You're still expecting that you're going to have to score at least twice to win. And so I think you kick the chip shot field goal. It feels like a pig letdown to get down to the goal line and then give up on the touchdown and get the field goal. But you at least establish the momentum. You get on the board. You kick off, you play defense, you try to get the ball back, come right back down the field, and maybe you score the touchdown the next time. And now you're up 10-7. Instead, they go for it on fourth down. They get stuffed. Ohio State keeps all the momentum. Tennessee, or Texas, not Tennessee, was not able to bury them at the goal line and force what turns out to be a block punt or a punt that's so close that they run it back or that they're guaranteed to score on the next drive. They didn't score on the next drive. They didn't force Ohio State into a horrific mistake on their old goal line. All things you might hope would happen, but certainly can't count on, or is not as likely as your ability to make the field goal from the one. And so I think at that point, the coaching move was to check your ego, check the man up mentality, do what logically makes the most sense, is just kick the field goal, get the points, and now you're in a position to come back and get a touchdown and steal this game on the road. And, once you get those points on the board, it's just amazing how a game tightens up. I've seen it all the time as a fan. Even like, let's say we're up 21-0 on anybody. Let's say we've had a torrid start against Tennessee, okay, and we're up 21-0 to start the game, and you're like, wow, we're gonna kill them, right? And you're watching the game progress, and then all of a sudden, Tennessee, let's say they hit one of their signature long plays, and then they punch it in on the next play or two, and now it's 21-7, and you think to yourself, well, all of a sudden that feels a lot tighter. You look at it and you're like, wow, I mean, just a few minutes ago you were blowing them out. Now 20, you might still look at it because it's kind of funny. The perception of the numbers makes a difference too. Maybe a better example would be, let's say you're up, uh, 24-9 for some reason. Okay, maybe they've had three field goals and you've been outplaying them. 24-9 looks like you're killing them, but then they get the touchdown on the next drive, and all of a sudden it is 24-16. And then you look at it and you're like, well, wait a minute, that's only an 8-point game. And the numbers don't look as imbalanced because now they have two digits and you have two digits and they're not that far away. So the scores like 24-9 and the feel of the game give you kind of a little bit of a sense that you've been doing more than you have. Or maybe, I guess, I don't know if I'm making a great example of it, but time and time again as a fan, one score from the other team can completely change my perspective. I feel like we have the game in hand. I like the score. I like the spread, the distance between us and the other team. You see it a lot, like 17-0. Maybe you start off a game against a big opponent, with a couple touchdowns and a field goal, and you feel great about it. Maybe that's a better example. And then they get a score, and all of a sudden it goes from 17-0 to 17-7, and you're like, wow, we're only 10 points ahead. I mean, right off the bat, even if you're in full fan mode, it's easy to look at the 10 points and think, geez, they're two touchdowns and they could take the lead. We're only 10 points up, a touchdown, a field goal. Well, that's true. That's accurate. But a lot of it is when your perception and reality come together and change your perspective. And sometimes one score quickly changes your perspective on the game. And so my point being is, again, coaching decision. Sark kicks that field goal. Ohio State, they felt like they were in control of the game. Their crowd was going nuts. They had not allowed Texas anything the whole game. But all of a sudden, Texas gets down to the one. They would feel great. I'm sure that, the announcers would go through the predictable, well, having given up the drive and down to the one, certainly Ohio State feels like it's a win to force Texas into a field goal. Yeah, they would. But as a fan, I'd be sitting there looking and going, dang, if we give up a touchdown, we could lose this game. I mean, I felt like we were in control, but we haven't scored enough. This 7-0 lead is nothing. So the enthusiasm, the excitement, the way the crowd feels, the way the team plays, you play a little tighter, you coach a little tighter, all of a sudden the game is on the line, and Sark did not put that pressure on them. And I think it was just too early in the game to start betting the whole game on fourth down. And it happened again later when they were down 14-0 and they got within into fourth and goal again. And again, they went for it. That one may be more arguable. At this point, you say, well, what's the field goal going to do for me? I'm already in the fourth quarter. I'm already down 14-0. Well, again, if you kicked the first field goal, then you would have been 14-3. Now you kick this one, it's 14-6. You think 14-6. Well, again, that's that's a lot closer. 14-6 is an 8-point game. So now all of a sudden, you get that late touchdown that they got. The last time they get the ball, it's 14-13, and a field goal can win the game. Again, they stalled out at midfield. So history would say, look, they didn't even get in field goal range. So that wouldn't have made all the difference. I get that. But I also look at it and say, you call a different game defensively as the defensive coach when the other team gets the ball and you're up by a point, and it could be the last drive of the game. Could come down to a field goal on the last play. You coach that differently. If you're a player, you play it differently. As much as coaches try to say, don't look at the scoreboard, play your position, play your role. Players are looking up at the scoreboard and they're like, we can't lose this game. We got to defend, but you're defending with anxiousness. So anyway, coaching matters, those decisions. I don't know what Kirby would do, getting back to our game and our point. He did go for it on fourth down against Marshall, and we did it 3 times, and we scored touchdowns on all 3 times. The third time, when we were up, we went up 38-0. That required a short fourth down pass to Lennon Humphreys from Gunner. I think his last touchdown of the game. And so, yeah, we had to use some fourth downs to score against Marshall. I'm not sure that we wouldn't use fourth down to score against Tennessee. Aggressive use of fourth down in the right place can be smart. And as I just highlighted with the Texas-Ohio State example, in the wrong place, maybe it's not the move. So that'll be up to Kirby. He'll make those choices, and it flows game by game. But it leads into the point I wanted to make about these games and what we're looking at, which is another question or idea that gets put out there, and some people have talked about it. I don't know if I've had it as a direct question, but I know as Georgia fans, a lot of people brought up, and I think I heard Brandon Adams address this on his podcast with Dog Nation. And I've mentioned before how much I respect Dog Nation, and I appreciate that the AJC, Land Journal Constitution, which has recently announced it's going to stop printing altogether, no more newspapers, just digital. But they have had the digital entity, the Dog Nation, for a while. Something I'm quite proud of because there's no such thing as a tech nation. It's not just that the AJC loves Georgia and hates tech, it's that you, the Georgia fan, demands the kind of coverage of your team, and financially, it's worth it to them to put a whole special thing together just to meet the Bulldog fan. And that's something we should take pride in because that's us. That's Bulldog Nation rising up. And they've responded with the Dog Nation material. It's good material. I follow it and I appreciate Brandon Adams' work. But I was listening to him and I think he maybe made mention of this. I've heard others talk about it, which is that Kirby Smart does not typically run the score up. You don't see Georgia put up like 70 to nothing type scores in these games. And the question might be, why not? And it's a fair question. Sorry, it is a fair question. And I think that it's worth noting there's a reason for that. And it's not just that Kirby's being nice or Kirby's being a gentleman and that he doesn't believe in beating these other schools up. That I think was actually really true of Mark Rick. Mark Rick is a great guy, as everybody thinks and knows, and he's not the kind of guy to embarrass other coaches and other people, even if they brought a lesser team to Sanford Stadium. And he's, not going to embarrass people. But in the Kirby era, the way Kirby has amalgamated what he learned in all of his experiences, including what he picked up, I guess, from Nick Saban. And Saban famously has the process. Everybody knew about the process. And Kirby, you don't hear the phrase the process around Georgia football like you did around Alabama football, even though he spent so much time with Saban and came over here and is largely a lot of what our team and program has done is emulated what Saban did. What Kirby does that's different is a little bit is Kirby focuses on, you'll hear it all the time talking about um, he talks about that Georgia, that we're not concerned with the other team. We're not concerned with what they did. We're not concerned with the rain. We're not concerned with the fans. We're concerned with playing our game. We play our game. We do what we're supposed to do. Then we're going to be okay. And that's kind of similar to Saban's process. Don't look at the scoreboard. The score is always 0-0. And of course, they use that too. The announcers are about to tell you, Kirby will tell everybody at the halftime, it's 0-0. Ignore the scoreboard. Pretend like there's no score. But the real, I think the real fundamental thing that is a great thing that he does, which is just institute a consistency across all practice, all games, all the time, is this is what you do to be a Georgia Bulldog. This is what you do to play your position. This is how we execute. This is how we practice. This is how we play. And it's 100% the same way all the way through. So what does that mean? Well, it means in a game like last week against Marshall, a game like this week against Austin P, you're not going to see us come out there and bomb like some teams might do, 70-yard touchdowns and run these plays that are just going to, be two play scoring drives and just running through, the other team. Could we do it? Sure. We out athleticize. We could go deep on most plays and try to connect on a ton of long bombs, and we could design some runs where, I mean, look, I'm not saying that plays are designed to only go 8 yards or 15 yards, but coaches do have plays for certain game conditions and certain distances. And every play, if executed correctly, blocked, the right way and done on time, could yield the blocking and the catch and the run or whatever could yield going all the way. And it happens. And that's why coaches are excited to get a guy like Zachariah Branch, who we would say is a home run threat. And we saw it in the game last week. He was the pass that Gunner threw him that turned into a 47-yard touchdown was about 3 yards forward. And I don't even think it was, I'd have to go back and look at it again. I don't remember for sure if it was actually forward of the line of scrimmage. Branch was forward of Gunner out to his left in the flat, but I don't remember if he was beyond the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. But whichever it was, he was forward of Gunner, but he was forward of Gunner 3 to 5 yards. He caught the ball and then he just made people miss, and he out athleticized everybody and he outsped everybody to the end zone. And that was exciting. But so any play, and that's my point, that play is not drawn up as like, okay, we need one play to score here. There's 20 seconds left in the game and we've got to score. You wouldn't run that play if that's what you needed. That's not the circumstance you would have run. That play is designed to get some yardage, and that's it. It's out in the flat, and the pass catcher, the receiver, whether it's a back or a wide receiver, has to make a choice, or a tight end could have been in that position. Whoever it is, they have to make a choice whether they go immediately out of bounds or try to play. That would depend on the game situation, the clock. Is this a 2-minute drill, whichever. In this case, Branch caught the ball, made people miss, outran people, touchdown. So, yeah, we out athletiциze these teams. So if we design plays that were meant to be big hitters, we could go down the field, bomb, bomb, bomb. We could rack up, we could have 50 something points or 70 points at the half if we wanted to. And so a lot of people might say, well, why don't we? Why don't we do that? And the answer is we don't change how we play. Kirby's philosophy is not to change. And again, I'm impugning this, or not impugning. I've watched him the whole time, just like you have, and I listen to what he says, and this is what I get. Of course, he's never sat down and told me this, and again, I don't know if he would if I had a chance to sit down and interview him. He would emphasize that we play the Georgia way, that we play what we want to do, we play us. We're not concerned with what the other team does. He would emphasize those things, but he might not draw the conclusion that I'm drawing and say, well, here's what it means in a game. But what it means in a game is we're not playing differently when we play these small schools versus when we play Alabama. We're playing the same way. We call the same plays, we run the same offense, we run the same defense. Sure, we'll save some of our best stunting blitzes for the big game against Tennessee or Alabama or Texas. Sure, we'll save some of our plays that we think could really be exciting, plays that nobody's seen before and might catch them off guard. Sure, we're not going to pull those out for the Austin P game, okay? We're going to save those for a critical moment in one of these big games, and that might change the game. But as far as the basics of how they play and what they're trying to accomplish, they are trying to play Georgia football and get people to understand their job and their role and do their assignment on each and every play. And because of that, we run our offense, we run our defense, and it produces results. And what's interesting about that is you'll see that we could just, last week, we had 488 yards. Marshall had 207. And we won the game 45-7. We have beaten top 25 teams with exactly the same profile. 450, 500 yards of offense, held them to 250 yards of offense, and won the game 45-7. You've seen that same game carbonized before. You think back a couple of years ago, our opener was against Oregon. That game was 49-3. Oregon was a top 10 team. So the plays all worked. We executed. We executed the same way. We got the same results, and it produced the same results. So, and it's designed to do it that way. So, sure, it could, if the other team truly just can't tackle, gets blocked out of every play, makes some mistakes, doesn't play with energy, we certainly could end up 70-0. Okay, it could happen, and last week's game could have too. Going back to those drives we talked about. The first three of the first four scores, touchdowns. Next 5 drives, you have punts. You have 3 punts, a field goal, and a touchdown. A lot of bog down by comparison. So that's on us more than that was probably on Marshall. I don't think Marshall did anything special or impressive. So those 3 punts were a result of we didn't execute. I haven't gone back to dig into each one, and it's not important right now to dig into that and say, why didn't we execute? What went wrong? We didn't execute is what happened. So because we didn't execute, we didn't score on those drives. We could have easily scored on all 5 of those drives. And had we done it, then yeah, the score would have been 65-7 maybe. And everybody would be like, wow, that's great. So it does say something about our team. It does say something about that game. Did we execute well enough to win handily and it was never in doubt? Yes. Does that mean that when we go play Tennessee, then we're only going to be able to win, 27-24 because they'll score more and we'll score less and it'll be closer? It might, because certainly Tennessee will have a lot to say about that. There'll be a much higher level of competition. But it also might mean that if we execute the way we execute and we play the way we play, it might yield the exact same results. So, because that's how our team is coached, that's how they practice, that's how they play. So, we don't see a ton of these blowout games because we're not trying to do that. We're trying to play our brand of football. And I also look. I think there's a certain wisdom in it too. I'm really impressed with that as a philosophy. When I was younger, I probably wanted to see the big beatdowns. And it's exciting to go. I mean, you'd like to think, hey, we're paying the money. We're going to go to Sanford Stadium. It's going to be hot and sweaty out there. I'd like to see some 70-yard touchdowns. Yeah, we all would, okay? We'd like to see some excitement. But in reality, I don't want guys out there loafing their way through easy scores and taking shortcuts to big plays and easy scores in this kind of game just because we can, and then not, you know, and spending time doing things and creating muscle memory that you're not going to be able to repeat and use against the Bamas and the Tennessees and the Auburns and the Georgia Techs even, okay? So I think this is smart, and I think we should again adjust our perspective to say what we're watching is execution. And it's difficult to execute against yourself in practice and be 100%. It's difficult to execute against any team, even a lesser talented team, and it's certainly difficult to execute against the top teams. But if you execute the same way over and over again, then hopefully you get the same results over and over again, whether it's in practice, whether it's against a weaker team or against a stronger team. So hopefully that lends a little more perspective on a couple questions I didn't address from last week and people were kind of curious about. And that should give us some perspective about this week as we look ahead. I was digging into some history, and I don't think I'm going to go all the way. We're going to keep it a little shorter today. Time to get on to celebrating game day in Athens, doing whatever your favorite tailgate is, whatever your pregame ritual is, or watching game day right up until other games are on. Although, like we talked about yesterday, there's not very much else to watch out there in college football today, so you probably don't have to do a lot else. But I did want to point out, I was looking through my time going back as a fan, which goes quite a number of seasons yet, and I haven't quite put my age in. But I guess if I start talking about what happened in my freshman year, the first year when I was on campus, then eventually you guys could dig it back and figure out. And I'm not trying to make it a big secret, but nonetheless, I was looking back through my time as a fan, starting from when I was a freshman, going forward and looking at those seasons, and I did find it wasn't necessarily an opener. It was, I think, September 17th in 1994. We played Louisiana Monroe and we beat them 70-6. So we did have a game that looked like that. But that was a Ray Goff coach team. That was his second to last team. He would get fired the next year. That team went 6-4-1. Never really was briefly for in the second week of the season ranked number 23. They lost, I think, to Tennessee that week, fell out of the rankings, and never saw the rankings again. Didn't finish ranked, obviously, with a 6-4-1 record. So when you look back, just as a glance through history in the last 30, 40 years of early season cupcake matchups, the one that had the biggest beatdown that I could find, it didn't point to, oh, wow, now that's a team that's going to go on and win a championship. In fact, it was one of the lesser teams of the last 40 years of Georgia football. They did have a winning record. They went 6-4-1, but they didn't do, they were not a top 25 team. They did not have an impressive season. So, again, beating down Louisiana Monroe, Marshall, Austin Peay, 70 something to whatever, isn't going to portend a championship. So let's not be confused and think it would. Let's not focus on that. Let's focus on, looking to clean up that execution. Let's see them continue to stuff Austin Peay. Let's see how the line progresses because we've had a lot of injuries. We're trying to figure out who our line is. Let's see how they block and play today, and let's just see how we control the game. So I think we touched base. The only other thing I was going to say, I was going to share a little perspective also of just reminding everybody. I know I've talked about this before, that we've fallen into the championship. I'm afraid that other fans have fallen into the championship or bust mentality. And so I will date myself a little bit here and say, I look back at my first years on campus when I really became the rabid Bulldog fan that I am today. That started as my freshman year when I stepped on campus and watched the games, and that was a tough era. It was the Ray Goff era of Georgia football, and I look back at those seasons. I was on campus around 5 seasons, for parts of 5 seasons as I worked out what I was doing with my degree and what to do. During that time, we went 34-24. We played in 3 bowl games, and we finished in the ranked in the top 25 just twice out of those 5 seasons. We were 17th in the 1993 season after winning the Independence Bowl, which was then called the Weed Eater Bowl, against then Arkansas, who was not then in the SEC. And we beat them 24-15 to wrap up a 9-3 season that propelled us to the high water mark at that point in my life as a fan, 3 years in as a student. That propelled us to the a 9-3 record and a number 17 final ranking. And that felt like real high ground at that time compared to where the team had been. The next season, we would go 10-2. It was Ragoff's best year, and we fell just short of really great things. But we did end up in the in the Citrus Bowl, where we beat Ohio State 21-14, and that would be Ohio State that was led by game day, everybody's favorite quarterback personality on TV, Kirk Herbstreit was the quarterback of that Ohio State team. And so we won that game 21-14 in the Citrus Bowl, had a 10-2 record, and finished number 8 in the country that year. But during those years, the rest of it was pretty lean. We did have a winning record, 34-24, but that's almost embarrassing compared to today's record. And one of the things I talked about before is, and this doesn't help you with today because this is not a big rival, but the first thing I feel like as a longtime Georgia fan that you want to do as we're grading and looking at a season, I do think this offers some perspective as we go into game 2 and we're trying to figure out what this team. Again, all of the angst about whether or not we had to use fourth down last week, all the angst about what we're going to see today and how's the line block, how many points we put up, that's going to be there anytime. I mean, even if we weren't a contender. But it's become highlighted because we think we should be a championship team, and we should be. We are definitely a team that I think is squarely in the championship mix, not among media favorites like we've talked about, but we are right there. We are just behind the favorites according to the media. If you look at Vegas, I think we might actually be the 3rd or 4th best odds to win a championship. So, we are right there in the mix, and we are worthy of that. But the season should not be judged. Our time as fans, our enjoyment as fans will be much better if we take a bigger, broader step back and we judge the season in layers. What kind of record did we have? What kind of rankings did we do? The things we've talked about before, what did we add to the historical record? We're going to add another win to our nation-leading home win streak today. How big can that win streak get? Can it get to be one of the top 5 home win streaks of all time? Can it add to the history books where it's already, I believe, the all-time longest SEC home winning streak for an SEC team. So that's something in the history books. It's, we already, our 29-game winning streak surpassed multiple Alabama teams, at least 2 different Alabama teams, a 28-game winning streak. So we already have the SEC all-time winning streak period at 29 games, which of course Alabama ended at 29 games. But you get the point. These add to our historical record. We are continuing to log more weeks ranked in the top 5. We're ranked at number 4 this week, 5 last week. This game will help that. We're going to win this game. We're not going to fall out of the top 5. So that's great. We're going to have another week ranked in the top 25, another week ranked in the top 5. So these are things we can appreciate about what we're seeing today when we go out there and play Austin Peay. So Austin Peay is also not going to add to our record, but the next thing I've always looked at and judged my time as a fan and how I look at successful seasons is how do we play against our rivals? And so this is a lead in. We'll talk about this more, and I'll keep going deeper on this as the season goes, but I'll give you a little perspective from my point of view where this started. When I first got to campus, one of the things I always love, and I'm sure a lot of you fans remember this, and there's some of this still out there, was the mantra, I hate orange. Georgia has so many rivals, and so many of them wear orange. Clemson wears orange, Florida wears orange, Auburn wears orange, Tennessee wears whatever the heck that god-awful color is, but I guess it's orange, road crew orange, whatever it is. So there's a ton of orange out there. And we used to play Clemson every year. So that added to the orange. Obviously in the modern alignments and bigger conferences, more conference games, we play Clemson periodically now, but not every year. So that changes things a bit. So, but I hate orange was really a fantastic mantra, and it's part of that rivalry idea. And I remember seeing those T-shirts the first day I stepped on campus, and I was like, okay. And so I was learning. I'm looking at the T-shirt. I'm like, okay, these are our rivals. I get it. Um, I also, just I mean, we have so many rivals. South Carolina, they're not an orange team, but border rival like Clemson, rival. Tennessee had not historically been one of our big rivals. Oddly enough, we didn't play them a lot until conference expanded and South Carolina joined the conference permanently. We came up with the East and West divisions. We played Tennessee very sporadically, but we do play Tennessee all the time now. It has, and that has been, and it led, and then Tennessee. I guess the short answer is Tennessee led, became a yearly rival, and they turned into a real rival because they won 9 in a row. So I think that got a lot of Georgia fans thinking about how often we need to beat Tennessee. Auburn is obviously an annual rival. Florida, Georgia Tech, Bama. When I first started being a part of Georgia football, we didn't play Bama very often, and I didn't consider them a big rival. Of course, when we had the chance to play them, we certainly want to beat them. So anyway, I just want to wrap up by saying, look, during those 34 and 24 years with just 3 bowl games and 2 seasons we finished ranked in the top 25, we also fell mightily short against these rivals. I went through and looked at those seasons when I first started watching from my freshman year forward, those first 5 seasons when I was on campus. And we were 1-2 against South Carolina, 0-3 against Tennessee, 2-3 against Auburn, 1-4 against Florida, 3-2 against Georgia Tech, 1-1 against Alabama, and 1-1 against Clemson for a 9-16 record against our rivals. So those seasons, first season, we went 1-4 against our big rivals. My second season, we went 1-4 against our big rivals. The '91 season was a little better. We went 3-2 against our rivals, and then in '92, that 10-2 season, we went 3-2 again. So, and then '93 things fell apart, and we were heading in the wrong direction, and we went 1-4 again against our rivals. So even in those best seasons, even in the 10-2 season in that time frame that we finished eighth in the country, we still only finished 3-2 against our top rivals. And so when I look back and judge the and I came to expect that for many years. That we kind of split our big games against our rivals. I used to come into the season thinking, well, I think we can beat Tennessee this year, and I'm hoping we can beat Florida. We've got Clemson on the schedule too, and Georgia Tech always. So or maybe I'd look at it and say, look, I think we're going to beat Clemson. I think we're going to beat Georgia Tech. So whether or not we make it into an elite bowl game, have a shot at possibly a national title, and what kind of season it's going to be is going to come down to how do we do against Tennessee and Florida. And a lot of those seasons, obviously, based on what I said, we split all of those games. And in recent years, we're not splitting those games very much. As we head into the Tennessee game next week, we'll talk about the numbers, where that rivalry was and where it has ended up now. But we have obviously been on a pretty good heater with Tennessee. But for me, as I just said, those first years on campus, we played them 3 times. We were 0-3. That was the first 3 games of the 0-9 stretch, which is the longest losing stretch against any one rival, yes, including Florida, that we had as far as straight losses in a row. So it really built a hatred of Tennessee for me, or at least a desire to see that we probably can't beat Tennessee enough, because we can't go back and beat them more than once in one season to keep making up for that ground. But we've done a pretty good job since then, and we'll talk about that more next week. Kind of reminds me of, I think there was I think it was Woody Hayes maybe against Michigan, or Bo Schemblocker against Ohio State in that era, one or the other. But there's a famous quote out there. I'll get it right for next week, but it was something along the lines of, already up like 40 something to whatever, they went for 2 and made the score, much worse. And I'm like, why did you go for 2 there? And he's like, because I couldn't go for 3. So that's how I feel about beating a lot of these rivals. And that's often for me the very first judgment layer that I want to lay on a season is, how do we do against our rivals? Then we start looking at where we go nationally from there. So little perspective on that. Listen, I thank you for listening. As I've said recently, please spread the word, get this out to other dog fans so that we can extend the conversation, get more comments and commentary. Please find a way to send me comments. You can do it directly on the Substack page. There's comments at the bottom of each podcast. There's a comment section. I'm sure you can do that from Spotify and Apple as well. You could email us or message us directly. You can join the chat that we started last week around game time. Any of those, would love to hear from you guys directly. So it's Saturday in Athens. Whether you're in Athens or not, it's still Saturday in Athens, and that means it's a glorious day. The Dogs are going to go out there, and they're probably going to win, we feel like. And so it's going to be a great day no matter what else happens. So just enjoy the day. Enjoy Game Week 2 coming to fruition, or the final part of it today as we go out and play Austin Peay. Enjoy the game. Have a great time. Spend it with dog fans. Spend it with your family. And go Dogs.